Hi, welcome to episode 6 of the Sweet Sparrow Knits podcast. My name is Julie. You can find me on Ravelry, Instagram, and Periscope as Julie Rose Sews, and you can find my Etsy shop at sweetsparrowyarns.etsy.com. Hello. I am recording on Monday, June 27th at about 6:30 in the morning. I am ready to go to work, and I thought I would sneak in a podcast before I go. I hope you guys have had a great week. I have. It's been relatively calm at work, which has been great. If you're new to the podcast, I work as a fashion designer in New York City. So work has been quiet, and I've had a good amount of time to just knit and relax. So yeah, I'm excited to share what I've been working on. So, for the first time on this podcast, I have a finished object. I realized that when I was writing up my show notes that this is the first finished object I've had on the podcast. How is that possible? I feel like I knit all the time, but I don't always finish stuff. You know how it is. I do actively continue working on things, but I used to be a very monogamous knitter. I would only have one project on the needles at any given time. And over time, I've kind of developed the habit, shall we say, of having numerous projects on the needles. Like I have one pair of socks for the train. I probably have one more pair of socks for home. I have a big project like a sweater. I have something like a wrap or a shawl. I have the never-ending hexapuff blanket. So yeah, they all get worked on. It just sometimes not in equal measure. But finished object. I have finished Rob's socks. Yay! They look a little silly on my sock blockers because the toe of the sock blocker ends about here. So, but you get the idea. It gives you the general picture. Let's get these closer up. These are knit out of Sweet Sparrow yarns in the House Wren base in the Dickon colorway. I'm super happy with how they turned out. They are a 64 stitch vanilla sock with an afterthought heel, and I did cut for this afterthought heel. Lately I've been kind of feeling like that works a little bit better for me. Like if I'm on the train and knitting, I don't have to worry about where I want to put in that waste yarn for the heel. I just keep on knitting, and then I just go in and snip for the afterthought heel at the appropriate spot, and ta-da, socks. So I hope he likes them. I think he will, right? Like, who doesn't like hand knit socks? I'm drinking Twinings spiced apple chai. It is really delicious. It's one of my favorite teas, especially for fall, but it's delicious any time of year. Works in progress. First is my calligraphy cardigan. This is the calligraphy cardigan pattern by Hannah Fettig. All this rustling is me dropping every skein of yarn that I'm holding onto the floor. So the pattern is the Calligraphy Cardigan by Hannah Fettig. I am using Knit Picks City Tweed DK in the plush colorway. And this week, actually Friday night in bed, I finished the body of the sweater. I did 4 inches of 2x2 ribbing for the bottom, and I went up a needle size to bind off because I do tend to bind off rather tightly, and since this is a longer length sweater, I really didn't want it to kind of pull in around my low hip, especially because I wear a lot of circle skirts and gathered skirts, and I did not want this to kind of create a weird like smooshing of my skirt. So now all I have left to do are the sleeves and the front button bands, and then I'll have a sweater. This is actually the second sweater that I have ever knit for myself. The first one that I knit was what was it called? It's by Alana Dakos. It's got the vines right here, or the leaves. It's from Botanical Knits 1. I can't remember the name of it. I'll put it right here. But that sweater did not fit me terribly well. Honestly, it was mostly that I did not choose the correct yarn for that sweater. I worked with Ella Rae Classic Worsted, which is a very like woolly wool. Like, it's a little bit rougher, and it's a pretty dense wool. It doesn't have a lot of drape to it, and it created a very structured cardigan, which is fine if that's what you're going for, but that's not a style that I find works particularly well for me. I do have broad shoulders and a relatively narrow waist, so if I wear something very structured, it tends to make me look a little bit like military, and that's just not my style. So it's still languishing in my front hall closet. I don't ever wear it. I would love to knit that pattern again, but now I kind of know how to pair yarns a little bit better. At the time that I knit that, I was right out of college. I was looking for a job. I did not have a lot of money to spend on yarn, so I just picked what was the most economical option. And unfortunately, it was not a good fit. So, and the other thing that I will change when I knit that cardigan again is the length of the bottom ribbing. If it was a longer sweater, I think it would be okay. It has probably about the same as my calligraphy cardigan, actually, about 4 inches of ribbing. But just on the shape of that sweater, that 4 inches of ribbing comes like right at my natural waist. Like, the top of it comes right to my natural waist, and it cuts me off at a kind of odd place, and it just wasn't super flattering. So I think what I will do, if and when I knit this sweater again, I will probably lengthen the body about 2 inches, and I will only do about 2 inches of ribbing at the bottom instead of the 3 or 4 that are recommended in the pattern. And hopefully that will make a more flattering garment. Another work in progress is one that you have seen previously, though not for a little while. The ridiculously long self-striping socks. Here they are. Here's one. Here's two. They're ridiculously long. They're like Pippi Longstocking socks. So yesterday I also snipped for the afterthought heel on the first one of these socks. This is Lana Grossa. I cannot remember the yarn base. I think it's in German, so I would probably not be able to pronounce it correctly anyway, but it'll be in the show notes. Speaking of which, you can find the show notes in our Ravelry group. Just search Sweet Sparrow Knits in the Ravelry groups tab. End infomercial. So I am doing the afterthought heel and just some Patton's Croix in the flax colorway. So I will be finishing that up probably tonight and snipping for the other afterthought, the other afterthought heel, and then I will have another pair of socks for Stash Dash. My strategy for Stash Dash, by the way, has kind of been to get a lot of projects to almost finished, and then I will finish them, and then I will get all the yardage for Stash Dash. So between Rob's socks, the super long socks, and 2 other pairs of socks that I have currently waiting for afterthought heels, that will give me about 1,600 yards for Stash Dash. I'm getting there. This is one of my favorite mugs, by the way. And this one I actually found. I'm feeling really chatty this morning, so I will tell you the story of how I acquired this mug. I love to go to yard sales and garage sales, and the town where I live has a lot of them. So one morning, I think it was last summer, I was out and about going to yard sales, and I did not find a single solitary thing that I wanted at any of them. Usually I can like find some cute little quirky thing to like put on my shelf or whatever. But yeah, nothing was appealing to me. I was walking back to my apartment empty-handed when I literally almost tripped over a box on the sidewalk waiting for garbage pickup. And I noticed this pretty mug sticking out of the top of it. And I kind of looked around to see if anybody was watching. And when nobody was, I kind of grabbed this mug and I was like, oh, there's nothing wrong with it. It's not cracked or anything. It was wrapped in newspapers from like 1995. I think it must have just been in somebody's garage and they just finally were sick and tired of having it on the list of things that they needed to unpack, and they decided to just toss it. So I grabbed the mug and then I went up to my apartment and I was like, yeah, excellent, got a really cute new mug. And then I couldn't stop thinking, well, what else is in that box? So I went back downstairs and I went back over to where the box was sitting on the sidewalk, and I looked around and I picked it up and I scurried back to my apartment. And there were 2 matching ones of these pretty floral painted mugs. There were 2 kind of silly, like fancy drink glasses. There was a cut glass vase and a soup tureen, which is very pretty. There was a lot of good stuff in there. That was exciting and fun. And that is the story of that mug. My next work in progress, I showed you the yarn last week. This is the first of the pair of my Hermiones Everyday socks in the yarn from Dyed in the Wool Yarn Company, which came in a sock blank and which I divided into 2 balls. I am really enjoying knitting this. It is so pleasant. I love knitting Hermiones Everyday socks anyway. They're a really enjoyable pattern. They don't take a lot of concentration. Lately this has been my bedtime knitting when I want to be in bed but I'm not ready to go to sleep quite yet. I put on a knitting podcast and I knit on these socks. I'm almost to where the gradient starts changing to the lighter color. You can just see a little, whoop, there. You can just see a little smidge of it in there. So that's, it actually makes it extremely motivating to knit on these socks because I want to get to that next color. I think I am also going to do a cut afterthought heel on these. Sorry for the excessive clinking of my needles. I am trying to decide which color I want to do. I feel like with such a fun yarn, they deserve a fun colored heel. So I think it will either be this Knit Pick Stroll in the Wonderland Heather colorway. I think that could be really pretty. Or this Bergère de France in Aluminium, which could also be very pretty. I don't know, I'm really leaning toward the Wonderland Heather. I kind of love the idea that the part of my socks that will be peeking out from the top of ankle boots or whatever shoes I happen to be wearing will be this kind of subdued pale pink with little speckles, and then as you go further down the sock it gets a little crazy. It's got this fuchsia and a blue heel. That's the way in which I'm wild. I change up my heel colors. So I'm really enjoying this. As I mentioned last week, Rob and I are going to Maine for the 4th of July weekend. Oh, I'm so excited. So I will have 7 hours of knitting time each way. So exciting. I am anticipating knitting on these socks. I will probably also bring a pair of Knit Picks Felici, just plain vanilla self-striping socks, just in case I get car sick and I can't look at what I'm knitting, or just to be able to switch it up if I don't feel like concentrating. Yeah, so on that note, I actually ordered more carbons. I knit my socks on carbons US size 2 16-inch needles. Wow. Coco's making his presence known. Alright, anyway. I love the carbons because I find them very comfortable to knit with. They're very light. They're definitely my favorite needles as far as, as far as the experience of knitting with them. However, I do have an issue with them falling apart quite a bit. They often come apart at the join for me, or they fall apart where the, let's see if I can grab one to show you. Oh, this one is actually fine. But I can use it for demonstration purposes. So either it'll come apart here at the join, or the little metal tip pops off. And I don't really know what to do about this. I have never used the Jimmy Bean's wool needle exchange, which sounds very unwholesome, I have to say. Needle exchange. Maybe they could have worded that a little bit better. Anyway, I have never used that, but I think I'm going to, because I now have 2 16-inch carbons circulars that are unusable, and I would like to trade them in for some new ones. So I have to just go ahead and do that. But in the meantime, I did order another set from Amazon, and hopefully that will be here very soon. So because I do not want to be on vacation without knitting. I don't know, maybe it's just the way that I knit my socks that makes the carbons have issues. I do tend to kind of pull the needle through. Maybe it's that. Next is Oh for Pod's Sake. This is a segment where I talk about podcasts that I'm really enjoying, as well as podcasts that have mentioned this podcast or my yarn. So first up is The Charm of It with Eva. This is one of my very favorite podcasts. Eva has a very soothing personality. She knits incredibly beautiful things. She's having a bookmark knit along right now for like, well, it's for any kind of bookmark, but she happens to knit incredible, complex Alice Starmore patterned Fair Isle bookmarks. Oh, they're so gorgeous. It's incredible. She has this sort of fearlessness about her knitting that I really admire. She takes on modifying patterns and designing her own patterns, and just doing all kinds of techniques. She's really, really great, and she's a very sweet person. She's one of those people that we've never met in real life. We have interacted on Instagram, and obviously I watch her podcast. And I just felt a connection with her when I started watching her podcast. We have very similar personalities, I think. We're both very content with quiet lives. We're both introverts and homebodies, and I just felt like I had found a kindred spirit. So definitely go check out Eva. She very sweetly mentioned me on her podcast this past week, and you can also enter to win a skein of my yarn in the Sarah Crew colorway on her podcast. And the second podcast that I would like to talk about this week is Bookend Knits with Marissa and Alicia. I found out about these ladies because they mentioned my yarn in one of their Instagram posts and very kindly tagged me in it. And which, by the way, if you are knitting with my yarn, I would love if you would tag me in your Instagram posts. I love seeing what people are knitting with Sweet Sparrow yarns. Anyway, so they had tagged me because they had discussed my yarn on my podcast on their most recent episode. So I decided to go and watch their podcast from the beginning. They have 2 episodes out right now, and they are so fun. Marissa and Alicia talk about knitting, obviously, but they also talk about books a lot, which I love as someone who loves to read. If you just heard a thump, that was Coco jumping into a cardboard box. Good boy, Coco. So the ladies on Bookend Knits were kind enough to feature me in both their Dyer's Corner and their Podcaster's Corner segments in their second episode. And I was just blown away. You guys are so sweet. I cannot thank you enough for all of the kind things that you said about me and about my yarn. I'm going to be super honest here because they talked about that they like my hair and just how much of it there is. And to be honest with you guys, I get perms. My hair is naturally stick straight. It does not have a lot of volume. So after a couple months, well, more than that, after quite a while of sleeping with my hair in like 8 little buns on my head, which made me look like an alien. Sorry, freshman year college roommate. I decided to just go ahead and get a perm instead of doing that every night. It's not at its curliest right now because I showered last night and then slept on it. Also, it's been quite a while since I got my perm redone. I guess that was probably in January, maybe a little bit earlier than that. So anyway, enough about my perm. Definitely go check out the Bookend Knits podcast. I think we are going to do an audiobook listen along because they also love audiobooks. And I'm really looking forward to that. I will keep you informed as more details emerge on that front. And Marissa and Alicia, thank you again so much. You are so sweet and so funny. And I cannot wait for episode 3 of your podcast. Knitflix. What have I been watching while I've been knitting lately? So I joined PBS online because I wanted to have access to the latest episodes of Call the Midwife. I absolutely love Call the Midwife. It is a series about women right after World War II who are midwives, and they live in a convent basically with the nuns who live there, although they themselves are not nuns. And they the show talks about their experiences as midwives in a poorer neighborhood of London. It is one of the best shows I've ever seen. It's touching, it's funny, it handles a lot of delicate situations in a very tactful way, and it's a show all about just a group of women doing, you know, helping other women, and it's a great show, and the costuming is wonderful, and the character development is great. I think it's easy in period dramas or period TV shows based in a certain period. I think it's very easy to kind of let the time period take over and you lose a little bit of the character development, but that is not at all the case in Call the Midwife. It's absolutely wonderful. And because I love Call the Midwife, when I saw in my suggested Netflix queue the Bletchley Circle, I decided to give that a try because it was based in the same time period. And the Bletchley Circle is about a group of 4 women who were code breakers during World War II, and the series takes place 9 years after World War II has ended. It's a really great show. The costuming is wonderful. It's a lot of fun to watch, but it's also very, very spooky. They use their abilities to break codes and solve mysteries to find murderers and to solve sort of government-related mysteries. And I've got to tell you, I watched this at night and it was spooky. If you are a fan of Law and Order, I think you will really like the Bletchley Circle, especially if you also like Call the Midwife, because I feel like they're pretty similar in terms of character development and time period. I also, against what I said I was going to do, I went right ahead and binge watched Orange is the New Black, the new season. It was pretty good. I don't know. I think I'm kind of close to being over Orange is the New Black. Like, I don't really care about Piper, the main character, anymore. I find the side characters much more interesting, and I find their stories a lot more compelling. But this season just felt very, like, heavy. There wasn't a lot in the way of funny moments. It was, which, you know, it sounds like a stupid thing to say about a show about a women's prison. Like, oh, sorry that there aren't more funny moments. But it's also, like, it's a show. It's scripted. It's written. So, I don't know. I feel like in previous seasons, the writers have done a pretty good job of balancing out more emotional and serious plot lines with funny aspects, and I don't think they did as good of a job of that this season, which, you know, maybe that's the direction that they are choosing to take the show, and that's their prerogative, obviously. Okay, acquisitions. So I worked at home on Friday, so I do not have my Knit Picks order. It was delivered to my work, and I am going to pick it up today, and I'm so excited. But I also did a swap with Stephanie, who is Starling Bird on Ravelry and Instagram, and she sent me the most wonderful goodies. First, we sent each other mini skeins. I'm not going to take these out of the bag because I want to keep them separate so that I remember who they're from when I write about them in my little Hexapuff journal. So pretty. Some of them I recognize, but most of the yarns are completely new to me, so I'm very excited about knitting with those. And she sent me a lovely card, and she also sent me some sweets, which are gone, and some wonderful teas from David's Tea, which I am completely enjoying. And then we also swapped a full skein of yarn. I dyed her up a skein of my Nuthatch base in the Shy Violets colorway, and she sent me this gorgeous skein from Rock and String Creations. Oh, I love it. It's so pretty. when I'm swapping, or when I'm shopping too, I really like to get yarns that are very different from what I dye up myself. And this absolutely fits the bill for that. The colorway is Crushed Blueberries, and the base is Jitterbug. It's an 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon base. They're 400 yards and in 100 grams. And the colorway is Crushed Blueberries. When I first saw this colorway, my inclination was to make blueberry waffle socks before I even knew the colorway name. So I think that will be a really good match, and I'm very excited about them. I especially think that all these little pretty speckles will be very cozy in front of my Christmas tree, because they kind of remind me of like Christmas lights, the little individual dots of light. So everything from this point out will be shop related. If that's not something you're interested in, that's totally fine, and I hope you have a wonderful week. But if it is, great. I am currently running a coupon code in my Etsy shop. My birthday is Wednesday, June 29th. I am running a coupon code, birthday party 26, which will get you 26% off of your entire order in my Etsy shop. My next shop update will be Tuesday, June 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I just want to give you a little preview of what's going to be in that. There will be Shy Violets on my Magpie base. There will be 2 skeins. There will also be 2 skeins of Shy Violets on my Gosling base, which is my MCN base, and 2 skeins on Nuthatch. I will also have Sansa on my Gosling base. This is one of my Game of Thrones colorways, and there will be 2 skeins of that available. There will be 1 skein of Sansa on Magpie. There will be there will be 2 skeins. There will be 2 skeins of Sansa on my Nuthatch base. And there will be 1 skein of Sansa on my House Wren Tweed base. It was hard not to keep this one, actually. I really love how this colorway looks on tweed. I have several new colorways for this update. Going along with the Game of Thrones line, this is Arya, named after Arya Stark, and this is on my House Wren Tweed base. It looks like the color is washing out just a little bit. There, that's better. It's this deep forest green with a bronzy gold, and it has little speckles of brown in it, which is a little bit harder to see on the tweed. I'll show you on the Nuthatch base. Here. There we go. I really wanted this colorway to show that Arya is tough and she lives a lot of her life in the books, kind of on the road and on the run, but she also has this sort of noble heritage, so I wanted to use very deep, rich colors for her. So there will be, good boy, Coco. So I will have 3 skeins available on House Wren and 3 skeins available. Good boy, Coco. Shh. 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 Good boy. And 3 skeins on Nuthatch. And the other new addition to my Game of Thrones series is called Kissed by Fire, and it's inspired by Ygritte, who is a wilding who meets and falls in love with Jon Snow. Here's the colorway. This one is a little bit of a departure from my usual style, but Ygritte is such a strong and fierce woman that I wanted to really show that in the yarn. And the reason it's called kitties, the reason it's called Kissed by Fire is because in wilding culture, people with red hair are very rare and they're considered to be good luck, and the term for them is that they've been kissed by fire. So I'm super thrilled with how this came out. It has this deep brownish black color. It has a soft gray, areas of cream, and then of course this auburn color which fades into a brighter red-orange at the edges. Ooh, I'm happy with this one. So there will be 2 skeins available on Gosling and 2 skeins available on House Wren. I also love how this came out in the tweed. And then I will also have some more of my most popular, and then there will also be more of 2 of my other colorways. There will be 2 skeins of Robin's Egg on my Nuthatch base. There will be 2 skeins of Robin's Egg on my Gosling base. There will be 2 skeins of Secret Garden on my House Wren base. 2 skeins of Secret Garden on my Nuthatch base. 2 skeins of Secret Garden on my Gosling base. And 3 skeins of Secret Garden on my Magpie base. And that is everything I've got for this week. I hope you have a fantastic day. I will be recording again on Friday because I'm going away for the weekend and I have a half day at work on Friday, so I will come home and record. I hope you have a wonderful Monday or whatever day it is when you watch this, and I will talk to you on Friday. Bye guys.